Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good morning class. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is rosnaila gaza widanti. You guys can call me Miss Ros, and today I will be your academic teacher. I'm so excited and very happy to meet all of you guys. Since this is our first meeting, I hope we can learn together in a fun, comfortable, and interactive way. So during the lesson, don't be afraid to ask the question or share your opinion, okay? In this class, making a mistake is completely normal because the mistake is part of learning process. The important thing is that you try and participate actively. So, before we starting the class, let's saying basmalah together. Bismillahirrohmanirrohim. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some countries are very free in business activity, while other countries are controlled by the government? Well, that is related to today's topic. Our topic is economic system. But before starting the lesson, let's do a quick ice-breaking activity. I will mention a situation and you guys guess which system it describes. Ready? So the first one is the government control almost all economic activity. What's the answer? Yes, common economy. The second one, people are free to run business and set prices. Correct, market economy. The third one, the government and private sector work together. Yes, mixed economy. Excellent, everyone. After this lesson, you are expected to understand the meaning of economic system, identify the types of economic system, and explain the advantage and disadvantage of each system. Now, please pay attention carefully. An economic system is a way used by a country to organize and manage its economy. It helps answer three important economic questions. What goods should be produced, how should goods be produced, and for whom are the goods produced. Every country has a different economic system. The first type is the traditional economic system. This system depends on custom and tradition. People usually produce goods in a simple way. For example, farming, fishing, and barter trading. The second type is common economy. In this system, the government controls economic activities. The government decided what to produce, how to produce, and price of goods. The third type is the market economy. In this system, individuals and companies have freedom in economic activities, priced and determined by demand and supply. The last type is the mixed economy. This system combines common economy and market economy. The government and private sector work together. Indonesia uses a mixed economy system. And now, let's look at simple example. When people freely open online shop and business, that reflect a market economy. When the government control full prices or electricity, that reflects a common economy. And when both happen together, it becomes a mixed economy. So actually, economic system can be found in everyday life. Now, I will show you a short video about economic system. While watching, please write the important points.
He knows a lot about all kinds of stuff, Professor Dave explains. Over the past few tutorials, we have been discussing different economic systems, but there's a common misconception amongst the public regarding the economic systems that certain countries possess. For example, you'll often hear that Cuba is a communist country, or that Denmark is a socialist country, or that the United States is a capitalist country. However, as we mentioned earlier in the series, all of those words are misleading. In reality, nearly every single country in the world has an economic system that blends a market system with components of government involvement. To better understand what that means, let's examine mixed economies. First, some review. A mixed economy is a combination of a traditional economy, a market economy, and a command economy. Sometimes the government steps in to guide the factors of production. Sometimes it's all about individuals and businesses. Sometimes it's even based on traditional values. But why does the government get involved in an economy? Simply put, because markets aren't perfect. Early free market proponents like Adam Smith believed that if it was simply left alone, a free market would create the most benefits for consumers and producers. They favored a laissez-faire economic policy, or a policy of just letting things take their own course in markets, without government intervention. However, even Smith admitted that sometimes government involvement was necessary. And ever since, government intervention in economies has increased for several specific reasons. First, certain needs in a modern society cannot be easily met in a marketplace. For example, how well could a free market provide a society with highway systems, or a military? It's a highly impractical notion. Second, most economists now argue that at least some sort of government intervention is necessary today to help lift up those in poverty. There is no perfect solution to fight poverty, but the goal of equity remains the same. For example, to help members of a society receive a basic education, governments in many countries provide public schools. Third, governments often need to play a role in an economy by protecting property rights. This means that politicians must pass laws and enforce laws to protect property. Generally, there are two types of property that governments try to protect: private property and intellectual property. Private property is property owned by individuals or companies, as opposed to being owned by the government or the general public. Intellectual property is any work or invention which is the result of creativity that one has control of. For example, a song is the intellectual property of the composer who wrote it. Fourth, governments get involved in an economy to make sure that trade remains fair. For example, a government may step in if there's a monopoly, where one seller dominates a market. And finally, governments need to fund public projects that benefit all of society, and they do this primarily by taxing individuals and businesses. A tax is simply any required payment to the government. We will learn more about the different types of taxes in a future tutorial. For all these reasons, pretty much every economist agrees that a mixed economy is the economic system that most strongly benefits a society. Again, this is why it's the most common type of economy around the world by far. When looking at a country's economy, it's most sensible to look at where its economy falls on a spectrum between a complete command economy and a pure market economy. Therefore, Cuba might be somewhere around here. Denmark might be somewhere around here, and the United States around here. Ultimately, however, the challenge is finding the balance between government involvement and economic freedom. To do this, every society must first assess its values and goals. We must answer difficult questions like, what are you willing to give up in order to eradicate homelessness? Or perhaps, what is the best way to tax citizens? To illustrate a mixed economy, let's see how a simple everyday transaction can shatter typical assumptions. Take the example of buying a gallon of milk in the United States. First, that farmer who owns the cows that produce the milk had to pay taxes. In addition, the United States Department of Agriculture regulates the dairy industry, requiring certain safety and sanitation standards. Next, before the milk is sold in stores, it has to go through the pasteurization process. In other words, it's illegal to sell raw milk in the United States due to the possibility of containing harmful microorganisms. Next, the company that pasteurized and bottled the milk also has to pay taxes, as well as the grocery store that sells the milk to you. And finally, you have to pay a sales tax to your local government when buying the milk. Such a simple transaction, on the surface, seems like the magic of a free market. However, behind the scenes, the government is actually quite involved. To what degree should a government be involved in an economy? There is quite a lot to discuss here, so let's move forward and continue examining this concept.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.
After watching the video, let's discuss together. Can you answer what economic system appear in the video? What are its characteristics? And what are the advantage and disadvantage? Please write in your book and I will give it as a homework. Nah, I will give you a main reasons why Indonesia choose mixed economy. Because it is ordered by constitution that we called UUD 1945 according to Article 33 of the Indonesian Constitution. Important things that affect many people's life like water, electricity, and fuel must be managed by the government. A mixed economy allows the government to control these essential things, while still letting regular people open their own business. And then, learning from history in the past, Indonesia suffered under colonialism, which was driven by greed and capitalism. Because of this, Indonesia's founding leader wanted to avoid pure capitalism, which can make the rich richer and the poor poorer. But they also didn't want communism, where people cannot own private property. So they choose the middle path. And to achieve social justice, or we called Pancasila. The fifth principle of Pancasila is all about fairness for everyone. In a completely free market, poor people can easily get left behind. By using a mixed economy, the government can step in to help by providing subsidies, free healthcare, and cheap rice to those who need it. And Indonesia is huge and diverse. Indonesia has thousands of islands. In the economy where 100% free market, private companies would only build factories and malls in big, rich cities like Jakarta. A mixed economy allows government companies like PLN or Telkom to build electricity and internet towers in remote village, even it doesn't make a big profit. And better protection during a crisis. When a global economic crisis happens, a mixed economy acts like a safety shield. Private business keep the economy creative and moving, while the government can step in with rules, taxes, and financial help to keep prices stable and prevent the country from collapsing. So, we need to remember that Indonesia chooses a mixed economy because it wants the freedom of a free market. So, anyone can start a business and make money, but also the protection of the government so no one gets left behind. I'm very happy because you guys were active during today's lesson. Remember, every country has its own economic system, and each system has strengths and weaknesses. Economic systems are important because they affect people's lives and economic activity. For evaluation, now answer this question individually. What is an economic system? Mention 4 types of economic system. What are the characteristics of a market economy? And why does Indonesia use a mixed economic system? Alright everyone, before I let you go, let me do a quick double check on the attendance. Just say I'm here when I call your name, okay? Elsa Mai Zahra, okay. Inaya Miftarohmah, okay. Tio, okay. Via, okay. Salwa Salsabila, okay. And the last one is Hanisa Ramadhani, okay. I'm just gonna say thank you for your attention guys. Let's meet again in another class. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.